Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Acton Auto Boutique in Acton, Massachusetts, we're driving the 1994 Chevy Impala SS. There's something about this car that has always charmed me, and it's the same sort of charm that always made me love an E39 M5 because it's hard to put your finger on it. Of course, there's power, we've got a V8, but this big body Chevy with these 17-inch wheels and the body style of the Impala SS has always struck me. I've never seen one of these and not looked twice. I've always pulled up to one in a parking lot, and today we get to go and experience and drive it. This car should not appeal to me. It's giant. It weighs over 4,000 pounds. It's a bubble inside. This is a police car. This is a Chevy Caprice, essentially. And the important thing about this was that Chevy was bold and they brought back the Impala SS name badge. They hadn't used it since 1969. So in 1994, bringing that back was a major risk, but it sort of paid off. Even though this isn't some crazy performance car, it's beloved, and it's never gone unnoticed that people want these and they love looking at them and they're fun to drive. So what makes this pre-OBD2 car so special? Well, we've got an LT1 under the hood. It makes only 260 horsepower, but 330 pound-feet of torque. It's port injected, as it proudly says on the engine. Actually, when we open it up, you'll see that. Kind of funny. But it was lifted from the Corvette, so it does have some provenance. This is kind of like the small block Chevy cool thing you could do for your family hauler. In addition to that, you get these killer 5-spoke 17-inch wheels. That's iconic, and the second you see it, you know exactly what it's from. And the rear suspension is lifted from the police car. So yeah, you're driving a cop car, but you're driving a cop car with a Corvette engine and beautiful body lines. They don't make them like this anymore. But what's fun is that you get to see all the old school GM stuff and switchgear in this car, and that's one of my favorite things. All of the 1994 cars came in black. In 95 and 96, they opened up some other colorways. And all of the 1994s, I forget if 95, but I know 94 definitely only has the column shifter. I can't remember if 96 was the only, yeah, 96 is the only one to get the T-grip on the floor. So that's about the exhaustion of my knowledge of these cars from my memory, but it is really fun to get in here and have, you know, you've got your two Chevy keys, one for the door locks, one for the ignition, the trunk release, the classic yellow button in the glove box. Man, that just takes me back to my mom's 1989 Oldsmobile Delta 88. And we've got a 4-speed automatic transmission with drive and overdrive, the classic overdrive style. Okay, let's get under the hood. Under this giant hood, it lifts easily because of these beautiful struts. This car, by the way, only has 14,000 miles on it. What a gem. They made a lot of them, so there's some gems out there to be had, but it's cool to see one in real life. And there you go, V8 port fuel injection written right over there. You can tell we've got a cable throttle, pretty simple stuff. These are robust. It has cast iron heads, and it's slightly different than the slightly smaller displacement version that would have come in the ordinary Caprice. But remember, this is a rear-wheel drive V8 in 1994. So sure, everybody reveres the Ford Taurus SHO, the super high output family cruiser, and that is a really cool engine and a really cool car, but it's front wheel drive. Yes, you get it in a manual. There are very cool things about that, but this is still the old school rear wheel drive V8 American muscle that was just disappearing, and that's gotta be worth something. In the trunk, oh my goodness, there's so much room back here. This is like proper cop car stuff because you know you're just going to be having all of your equipment, weapons, armor, whatever your normal police force is cruising around in. Plenty of room for that. Or if you're in the mafia, maybe some bodies. I don't know. This is a large, cavernous, outrageous space. You just like wouldn't see this in a modern car anymore. And we've got a full-size spare sitting right there front and center. And I almost forgot, you'll notice there are no filler caps on either side of the vehicle because this is one of these old school guys where you fill up under the license plate. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. That's some real Americana for you, baby. I'm sure that's really safe. You get in a rear end accident and it's right at the fill port. And despite it being a giant cabin, it's funny, this bench seat in the rear, sure, there is plenty of room, but this car is like the size of a school bus, and then you get back here and yeah, there's like legroom and everything, but you'd almost expect there to be like a play space in the middle of this because it's just so enormous when you look at it from that profile angle. It's a long car, but in the rear, we're set up kind of high, so it's like stadium seating. I can look out over that dashboard. We do have Impala little embroidery things all over the interior. We've got an armrest that is mostly useless. You kind of have to like lean to get to it, and the seats aren't the most comfortable, but you know, we're not here to critique the comfort of a 94 Impala SS. I don't think that's the point. The point is that this is a time capsule of something that I still think looks incredibly good and would 100% drive and use regularly. Gluing us to the road on these gorgeous wheels is a 255 section tire on a 17-inch wheel, front and rear. You can rotate them, pretty convenient. 4,200 pounds is about what this weighs, and that means, you know, you're making do with the 255 section tire. That's fine. And if you've got a 255 section tire with modern rubber on it, I think it'll grip just fine. It pulled 0.86 G on the skid pad back in 94 when Car and Driver tested it, so I bet you could finagle a little more out of this today, but chances are you're not taking this to the track. The doors are interesting because they're big, but they don't actually open very far. That's a pretty shallow angle for a door of this size. So I find myself almost pushing it too hard every time I go to get in the car. The floor shifter is apparently more desirable. I disagree. I think having this is more cop car, more cool. It reminds me of the PPV that I've been driving around with Team Champagne Ninjas. But let's get it started up. Really bizarre setup for the gauges because we've got analog gauges for our oil temp, our water temp, our voltage, and our fuel, but then in the center we've got this LCD display for our speedometer and no tack. There is no tack on this thing, so we'll have no idea how high we're revving out our 5.7 liter LT1. There's some very quick windows, and then I can adjust my seat right here, and I can go up and down as well. And my mirrors, these tiny little mirrors, I can adjust electrically, which is nice. I appreciate that, but they are very small. It's kind of comical that a car this large has mirrors that are like this big. Seems like an Italian car thing to do. We'll put it in drive and we'll shift it into overdrive when we get out to the highway. The first thing you notice is just how nice and kind of floaty it is. It glides over the road. There's plenty of torque down low, so despite not having a tachometer, I know that I've probably not revved it very high at this point, and it can get me off the line just fine. And I've got brakes, I've got four-wheel discs, I've got 12-inch discs in the front, and sure, by like 1994 standards is pretty good. By today's standards, this may seem a little lackluster in the power, performance, and braking department, but that's the thing. You've got to drive things in the mindset of like, what was this in period? If memory serves, the Lincoln Continental also had a similar digital type dashboard, so I assume they were kind of going after Ford with this, but who knows? We'll have to have some either old school Chevy owners of the past commenting on this, or maybe there's some historians out there who remember. I'm going to put this blinker on in a second to get on the highway, but I want you to really listen to this relay. It's a proper relay. It actually has some go. This is pretty torquey. Despite the fact that we are going to be stuck behind this Kia Sportage. Just like all the modern Chevys though, This is still kind of a crummy stock. But then again, so was the stock on my Porsche from 1988. So we can't really like pan Chevy for that. But we can pan them for now because they still have kind of like uncomfortable engagement on those blinker stocks today. The gearbox shifts with vigor, let's say. But it doesn't need the downshift. You lean into it, and you're going. This thing is quicker than the numbers suggest. 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds, according to the old days of motoring tests. But this is definitely going to keep up with modern traffic. And I read that 260 horsepower number and was a little bummed out. I forgot that they didn't have more than 300 horsepower. But I don't care anymore. This small block Chevy's doing work. What I really miss in cars from these days, which I don't think we really appreciated enough, is buttons and switches. It's all very simple. Everything's an annoying touchscreen now, and sometimes you just want to change the volume on a radio, and you have to use some haptic touch nightmare. And if you're driving, oh God, vintage cars, this is a vintage car at this point, you don't have to think about that. I want to change the fan speed. Boom, there's 4 speeds. What do I need infinite speeds for on the fans? I can just adjust here and everything is good. This V8 kind of only lets you know it's a V8 when you're in the pedal. Otherwise, it disappears behind the vehicle. It doesn't intrude. It's not there to be shouty, and maybe that's a bummer. Maybe you do want to just kind of straight pipe your Impala SS. A lot of people did a lot of different kinds of builds on these cars because they were cool. And people turned their Caprice wagons into sort of like Impala SS wagon style things by, you know, people throw LSs in these things and they're probably a 6-speed Tremec and turn them into drag monsters. And that is appropriate. That is the GM spirit, the Chevy spirit. But this, as an original car, is so charming right now. Oh, it's so smooth. It's so smooth. And the refresh rate on this, I think, is faster than speedometers today. Like, people always complain when I drive brand new Porsches and stuff because the refresh rate on the LCD display is often really slow and you can't actually get that granularity. What's funny is that the refresh rate on this speedometer is probably faster than what you get in a modern $200,000 Porsche. I need to find some shade to shoot this interior, and I think I just found my spot. Yes. Good, good, good. All right, shall we continue? Second startup in one video. Oh man, lucky, lucky. It is really tempting to do a big smoky burnout or donuts. I'm not gonna, because it's disrespectful. And this thing is mint, but like, that's what this is. This is like a hooligan's vehicle. Kind of in love. It's kind of the best. There's nowhere to put your arms. It sounds silly, but there's, you know, my elbows are just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. You gotta lean to use the armrest. This one isn't really conducive to, like, I guess you could do this, But yeah, I mean, if you're holding the steering wheel with both hands, you are just flapping around. There's so much room between you and the door, which is bizarre. That is not a thing that happens in cars today. The thing I like most about this Impala SS is the fact that even in 1994, this probably felt like, ooh, you better scoop up the last of those rear-wheel drive V8s while you can, because everything was moving to more easily packaged front-wheel drive 4-cylinders and V6s, and econo boxes are gonna be the next generation. But to be able to buy a small block Chevy driving the rear wheels in a big body, it probably really did feel like the end of an era. And I feel like the last few years of the automotive industry has just been, every article you've ever read about anything good is always like, well, this is the last one, better scoop it while you can. And it just is depressing. But maybe this car can help you realize that it's kind of always been like that. There's always an era that's ending. And if you thought that this was going to be the end of an era, well, you were wrong. There still was a long line of couple decades of V8 rear-wheel drive cars that came out. The Germans went crazy. We got V10 M5s and all this wild stuff. So I hope that this car is like a beacon of hope, that it may always feel like you're in the end of an era when you're living in it, but sometimes we move a little too quickly. Sometimes we think the future is there and it's really not. And right now, I think, is it Hertz or Enterprise just got rid of a ton of their EVs because they're like, dude, this isn't the answer. They dumped it. Maybe we're not going straight to some EV future, because I sure as heck know that I'm not ready for it and the infrastructure isn't ready for it. Maybe there is still hope for some old school analog vibes to buy new. So thank you so much to Acton Auto Boutique for this like awesome experience. I drove a Ferrari 250 GT California yesterday, and I have to say I was just as excited to see this Impala SS on my calendar, because I always wanted to drive this car, and I'm thrilled that I have. It has lived up to the hype. It has not disappointed me. And even though it only has 260 horsepower, it still gets up and goes and feels proper. Man, what a cool house. Ooh, what a good garage. So if you're looking for that minty fresh Impala SS that you've always lusted after, now's the time. It's either going on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, or maybe they'll just be on their website. Give them a call and see if you can scoop this up before it's too late. All right, now I'm playing that game. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. This is a couch. These seats are so wide. There's no lateral there's no lateral support in these seats whatsoever. It's hysterical. Like, I love the idea of someone like trail brake pitching this car into an on-ramp sideways. Like, if this was a crummier car, I would do that. This car's too nice. This is like, it would be sacrilege for me to be the one to do any damage to this thing. It needs to live a nice, long, healthy life with someone who's gonna take care of it.